Eli, can you get them on here?
Oh,
And then we'll put the presentation up in a minute. We'll just,
what's that?
I gotta be able to see if we have a quorum.
We need one.
No Roland's on there.
Oh, that's fine. It's on both screens better.
Wash your hands.
What's it, those screens?
can you get it, Eli?
I don't know where it's on those screens.
Okay, we're gonna go to school from now on. I think we're gonna have a school year that starts in March, maybe November. Because that'll give us November, into October, November, December.
Are you sharing the screen on Zoom?
Yeah, just, there they are.
Mayor sign.
Yeah.
There they are, right there.
Okay. Hey, there's Bobby.
He's not coughing.
Y'all wait. Look at Jeff, that's Jeff Snowden.
Jeff Snowden. Alrighty. Hello, everyone.
I'll call him. Y'all go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a special meeting of the City Council of the City of Pearsall to be held today, Tuesday, May 19th, 2020. The time is 7:08. May I have a roll call, please? Mary Moore? Present. Julian Hernandez?
Here.
Richard Gambara? Sonia Hernandez? Here. Brenda Trevino? Here. Abel Nieto?
Here.
Roland Segovia?
Roland's not getting sound, that's the,
I mean,
it shows that you're on the call, but it doesn't show.
Davino Rodriguez?
On your, it doesn't show the picture. It's the picture.
I know, it's
Really, I can't see you.
getting the call. Hold on.
We do have a quorum, so let us proceed on with our invocation as well as pledge of allegiance. Please stand for our invocation. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, because this is the day that you have made. God, we just thank and praise you for how you've been so gracious to us in this time of COVID-19, God. We just thank you how you've given everyone wisdom and knowledge to help combat this disease, illness. And God, we just praise you and thank you for everything that you've done for us. And God, as we go forth as in city business, God, give us wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of what you would like for us to do in these perilous times. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Receive part of.
Mary, we're having some technical difficulties
Okay.
with Roland. I think Roland is on the phone, but I think we're,
If you can hear us by speaker.
can you hear us, Roland?
And what is his volume? Because I can hear on here.
Okay, we got you. Show that we can hear you, so I'm gonna hang up from the phone.
Okay, item 4B, 4A, new business, discuss water service, water sewer rates for the city of Pearsall. Discussion only, please.
Sure. Mayor and council, good evening. I'm not gonna say much other than to introduce our guy that's worked on the water and sewer rates. His name is Jeff Snowden. Some of y'all know him, some of you may not. Jeff's gonna go over the water and wastewater rates tonight and give a presentation. What we're gonna do is we're gonna cut everybody else out. I think everybody should have a copy of the presentation, and Jeff is gonna go over the presentation. People that are here at the council meeting will be able to see the PowerPoint, and Jeff will go page by page to anybody that's not here. So just have your PowerPoint presentation with you, if you will. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. Is my audio okay? Can everyone hear me?
Yes, Jim.
Great. This will be an informal presentation. I'm glad to pause and answer questions throughout every slide. So please ask questions as they arise. And we will get started with slide 1, which is titled the Study Objectives. And if I had to summarize this slide, you asked me to look at your system data, your billing data, your production data, your financial information, to give you recommendations on your rates in order to pay the expenses that you're forecasting for your system over the next 5 years.
I don't know how to do that.
And I'll add that this is an update to a study that I completed in 2012, at which time you adopted a 5-year series of rate increases that you have since implemented. And I'm glad to be back and be of service. And I will move on to the next slide. Slide 3 is entitled Macro Water and Wastewater Flow Data, treated water in and out. And if you'll notice, I have allocated 2 parts of the slide. The first part, the years 2008 to 2011, is what I call pre-AMR meters.
Just go to number 3.
And then the period 2015 to 19 is since you have installed those advanced meters. And what I'd like to draw your attention to is this: your treated water pumped on annual average has not changed. Gallons per year before the meters, and you've been at 490 million gallons per year on average since the meter. If you'll move to the next column, however, and look at your metered water consumption, you'll see a marked decline in how much you've sold. You produced about the same, but you sold much less. There is a more broad discussion related to those meters and your water sales and declines, which I'll touch on briefly this evening, but I would like to reserve a more detailed discussion for another time, possibly a closed session discussion on those meters.
Jeff,
Yes, sir.
is that the one where I was not on the council 3, 4, 5 years? I'm sorry, can I speak? Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Can I speak?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I can't see no picture. That's why I'm just going blindsided. Anyway, Mayor, Jeff, is this the one where something with this company that the past administration, past council hired something with Johnson & Johnson? Is that the one you're talking about?
So that is it. Johnson Controls.
And you're going to touch up on it later on it?
Would prefer, Mr. Segovia, yes, that we dedicate some more time to that topic, maybe in closed session.
No problem, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir. I'll just add in the closing on this slide, if you look at the far right column called Influence to Your Wastewater Treatment Plant, it's the same story. For the years 2008 to 2011, you took in about 330 million gallons a year, and then the years 2015 to 19, on average, you took in 380 million gallons a year. So you're producing about the same amount of water, you're capturing more at the sewer plant, but you're selling less to the meters, and that's a concern. And when I looked at my model that I developed in 2012, I forecast that you should have been generating about $300,000 more per year in water revenue than you're actually generating now. So there's opportunities there, and it's certainly worthy of further investigation, which I'm in the middle of now.
That was without the meters, right, sir?
Yes, sir. Those numbers I had formulated back in 2012 before you did that contract. If there's no other questions, I'll move to slide 4.
Go ahead.
Slide 4 is your history of the water and sewer account growth, and you can see that you're adding on average about 22 water accounts a year and about 15 sewer accounts a year. So you don't have a flat stagnant system, you are adding some. There's some years where the numbers jumped dramatically and then came back down, and those may or may not be related to Eagle Ford Shale activity. I'll give you an example. Let me see here. If you look at commercial water, we'll talk about commercial water pretty in depth this evening. You can see in 2016 you had 380 accounts. 2017 you jumped to 436, and then 2018 it fell back to 372. And that delta of about 60 accounts is pretty significant in revenue, and we've been doing some work and working with your team to understand where those commercial accounts went, or if they are in fact still on the system and not being billed. Without any questions, I'll move to slide 5.
Proceed on.
And slides 5 and 6 relate to your revenue versus expenses, and both of them tell the same story, which is since 2013 you've grown your water revenues by about 5% per year, which is what we targeted. We implemented very modest rate increases, and as a result we've grown revenues modestly. However, if you look just at personnel over the same time period, we've grown your personnel costs by 10% a year. So that's a number bust. You can't grow expenses 10% a year and grow revenue 5%. And if you'll look on slide 6, it's the same situation with sewer. Sewer, we've grown revenues 10% a year, but we've grown personnel expenses 13.5% a year. So we have to be mindful that if we adopt a rate plan, it's only going to be as strong as our ability to control expenses. Any questions on that, those comments?
Well, Jeff, what would you,
Just slide.
1 second,
Yeah.
Councilman Segovia. 1 second. Go ahead.
Mr. Reyes, for fiscal year ending 20, 679,000. It's a big jump from 474, 600 to
Page.
page 5. Did we do something with the budget to push a lot of, what's the main reason for the big increase?
Yeah, the increase, and we were looking at this actually today, and I was speaking to Mr. Gandara about some of this stuff as far as the water revenue, and of course he's learning. Maybe I'm a little ahead on him. I'm a little ahead on him here. But the things we identified here, of course, you see the biggest increase is your overtime there as far as percentage, okay? So that's a 72% increase. You do have workers' compensation. I believe there's workers' comp, and the other jump there, I'm talking percentages here, is the FICA, I believe the Medicare expenses. So we had some health issues, workers' comp issues there. And then the other things right below that, those are salaries that are attributable to pay for the finance director and the city manager. Those, I believe, I want to say the city manager, I need to verify that. I want to say that's due to the contract, the contract the city has with me on that. That's where that money was put in. Half of that and the other half was put into the general fund. And I believe the other one that increases the stipends. So the stipends were never, now I need to verify those stipends were allocated somewhere else in prior years. Because my assumption is this, on the stipends, those things were being paid out of some, I don't know where, I need to verify where those dollars were moved from, if in fact, because I don't think that the stipends began in 2019 for them. I think they've had them ever since. I just need to figure out why they weren't being billed to, or why they weren't allocated from this particular fund. So I hope that answers your question. But those are the biggest increases. The others are, I'd say, relatively modest. Now, that's on the water side, and Mr. Gunder and I talked a little bit about the wastewater side. So you look at the salaries there, the biggest jump when I say the jump here was the salaries and wages scale that jumped up 9.2%. Actually, from fiscal year 2013, the adjustment went from 76,000 to 141,000. And so
Where is that?
on page 6,
Oh,
sorry, unless you have any questions about page 5. Page 6 there, you can see the jump in salaries and wage scale went from fiscal year adjusted 2013 from 76,000 to 20 went to 141,000. So that's an increase. It's an overall, I guess, a 9.2% increase, but that was a pretty big jump those years. So what I'm trying to identify there is whether we added more staff out there. I don't know that there was necessarily any significant pay increases. So my assumption right now, again, I don't have all the facts yet, but my assumption is that we added staff out there. Particularly from year 2013 to 2014, and maybe even some 2015. 2018. And then there was an increase. There's been increases every year on that end. There hasn't been any decreases. And the other ones, I can only say that we had, again, medical. I know we've had some medical issues. Some staff out there have had medical and some workers' comp issues in past years, particularly last year. And so you see that significant increase in major medical insurance. So I hope that answers your question. But I do need to check that, a couple of things on there as far as the salaries and wages scaled under that row there that I'm describing.
We can pick up on slide 7, which details your current and proposed debt obligations that will be paid from water and sewer revenue. And the top 3 are existing. There's a Series 98 bond, there's a third of the Series 2012A, and a third of the Series 2016 that water and sewer are picking up. And then everything below that are proposed debts, obligations over certain time frames. To be, first one is PNC Equipment Finance, and that is the meter payment. That's for the advanced meters with Johnson Controls. That represents an outflow every year. Any questions on that?
I have a question.
Series 2020 government capital equipment purchase, there's a $500,000 equipment purchase being proposed currently, of which 50% of those equipment items would be for water and sewer. So that 5-year repayment is built into the model. There's a Series 2027 utility extension project that LNV developed a cost for. Spoken with Mr. Reyes on this today. We pushed out to 2027. However, my understanding is this project may end up in you bringing in additional wastewater connections to your system, which would result in additional revenue. So it might come close to paying for itself. We don't know yet. We've asked the question and we're going to get to the answer. If that's the case, though, it would certainly behoove the city to move this up and extend that service and bring in those new connections and that revenue more quickly. There's a Series 28 hydraulic model project that LNV developed. That document was a 2014 document, so there would need to be some updating to that. But there's 2 water wells that have been identified as needed, both at about $1 million each. And then there's Series 21 capital projects that your staff developed for water and sewer. So I've built in the assumption that over these years you will incur these debts, and I've prepared recommended rates that will generate enough revenue to operate your system and repay these debts. Any questions?
I have a question, Mayor.
Go ahead, Councilman.
Yeah, if, we were to put on the agenda for next week, the council to approve, trying to get, that water well. So that's one of the biggest necessities in Pearsall, the water issue, besides the streets, right? Cause some of these water wells that we have are a good 50, 60 years old, they're pretty old. And, take for example, the Sherry plant, I know that we've been putting a lot of money into it. The Comal plant on, Comal Street, we've been putting a lot of money into it. And my question to you, sir, is, can we, if we were to put on the agenda and try to move it up, to get a water well for 2021, would you have to adjust all these rates again?
The question is directed to who?
No, sir, because, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Jeff. Jeff? You can
Okay,
answer, you can answer.
No, Mr. Segovia, because, yes, can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay, I'm ready to respond if you can hear me.
Yes.
We would not need to change much because we would not need to change much because I have Series 22, assuming that your engineering and permitting would take place in fiscal year 21. So the timing would be pretty close. Does that answer your question?
yes, and then the follow-up question would be, do you know any of the capital projects that are scheduled for 2021?
Yes, sir, I do.
Is the water well included in one of those?
No, sir, those projects, for 2021 consist of, upgrade the water line from a 10-inch to a 12-inch. On Colorado to Cherry Street is the water project on there. And then the wastewater projects are automatic bar screen, if the sewer sewer line replacement from 680 Ash to Pecan Street, and the replacement of manhole 22 located Ash to Pecan Street. Those are the projects that are in the 21 capital projects.
So we have nothing for a new water well?
No, sir, other than that standalone item called Series 22 water wells, and that budget is for 2 water wells. And I need to add that we're assuming 100% financing. Larry Dovalina down in Catula just got, and Mr. Reyes correct me, I believe he got a 35% forgiveness from Water Development Board for his water wells. And
Yes.
that possibility exists for the city of Pearsall as well.
Jeff,
But that'll be,
So you get forgiveness, which used to be called
Okay.
Jeff, I just want to make sure to reiterate to the council on page 7, the series that you're talking about is 2021. We're saying that we'd issue debt. There'd be some debt issuances with each one of these projects, and I think what we're trying to get at is trying to identify priority and saying, you know, do we consider a water well a priority, or do we consider this extension a priority? We've already had the hydraulic model. Again, I would say on those ends that would probably be my project that I would recommend that we push out, simply because we probably need to update that. But as far as a priority list, what I would suggest to the council, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, is the utility extension, the water wells that was pushed out to 2027, the water wells that are 2022 series, and the 2021 capital projects are the, as far as some sort of an order or structure as to how we want to finance the debt. That would be a point of discussion tonight. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir, and I believe you've already pulled the trigger on the government capital equipment financing.
That's right. Yes. Yes, that's correct.
So that's also modeled in. Mr. Reyes, would you like to pause and for the council to discuss prioritizing these projects, or would you like me to continue?
Absolutely. I think it's a point to, maybe we can come back to it after the whole discussion is done, and we can give you some direction, I hope, from the council's end as to how we want to proceed.
I have a quick question for you, Fred. Is that, the one, 2016 combined tax limit pledge revenue, is that for the, in lieu of the surcharge?
That is probably a question for Jeff, yes, but there is no longer, you won't have that surcharge, yes. It is gonna be, he'll discuss the increase, but yes, to answer your question.
Is that the one in lieu of the surcharge?
Yes.
The 2016 financing is what was the cause of the surcharge that was adopted after it.
Right.
It was the impetus. Before we move on, I'll just say on the utility line extensions, touched on this before. If you look at commercial sewer, you have 361 commercial sewer accounts, and you have 259 361 commercial water accounts inside city limit, and 259 commercial sewer inside city limits. So almost 100 account difference. And to the extent that you could extend service and bring in some of these customers that are water only inside city limits, that's revenue to the system, which, well, is consistent with your mission and also helps us achieve a lot more with these financings and helps us lower rates because we have more of a rate base than rate revenue. That's why it's important on those line extensions for annexation that we really understand how many new connections are going to come online.
May I have a question?
Go ahead, Councilman.
Yes, Jeff, did you implement the rate study into the annexation that was done by the city of Pearsall last year?
Well, no, sir, I wasn't aware of any annexation, but if that resulted in new accounts being added to your billing system, then I did capture those. I've got all your bills through January of 19 in the model. I'm sorry, January of 20, excuse me.
See, and that's a concern that I've always had against this annexation. I mean, it happened right before I took office, they did the annexation, which I've always been against. And the reason I've been against is because I don't see that we financially have the money to do all the water and sewer extensions out there yet. And, yes, we're already collecting sales tax and property tax from those people, yet, we're not actually giving them the services that they need, that need to be provided. I know that, we're getting away with it because there's a loophole that within 3 years or 5 years that we got to give them service. But that's besides the point, because there's other parts in the city been annexed before and have not gotten any sewer and water connections.
Yeah.
But if you're saying that you already implemented some numbers about putting the actual extensions of water and gas lines, I think that I would, hey, you probably have to go back and use the numbers again.
Hey, Jeff, just to be clear, that is plugged into your model under, again, I think what he's referring to, Jeff, for Councilman Segovia is a Series 2027 utility extension. He's basically asking if that's part of the model, and it is. It's that 2.5 million would be used for the extension of the water and sewer out there.
That's correct. Yes, sir. So, Mr. Reyes, I would say that right now my model has half the story. I know that $2.5 million, if you finance it for 25 years at 2%, add $130,000 a year to your expenses. What we don't know is how many new connections will result and how much revenue they'll generate. That, in order to really give you the full picture, that's what we need to define. How many new customers would come online, and whether they be residential, commercial, and then we can give you both sides of the equation so you can make a good informed decision.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I have a question for Mr. Hernandez.
Mr. Who?
Mr. Hernandez, Julian.
Yes.
Councilman.
Sir, by any chance, sir, when y'all voted, I'm just trying to figure this out, 2027. On the comments that Jim just made right now, that we should have already gotten the numbers of how many water meters, gas meters, and everything is out there. Did we, the council before voted on this, did they get a breakdown of how much revenue was out there and how much expense it was gonna be to run water and sewer and gas line extensions before the annexation?
We got a projection on those numbers, and that's what we based decisions on. Yes, we did.
Okay, maybe that would be a good start for Jeff, if he doesn't have that, those numbers, for the annexation project.
Did Jeff get it?
He has them already.
That's the estimate of probable cost we got from L&B, was $2.5 million. The estimate that we put on there for Mr. Snowden is, that we gave to him, we didn't put it on, is that $2.55 million that was his estimate of probable cost that L&B provided us, or provided the city back in, I want to say 2017, 2018. Did you hear that, Mr. Segovia? You okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, if there's no other questions on slide 7, I'll move on to slide 8.
Okay.
And slide 8 is just a summary of your annual debt service and how that will change over this planning period. So currently, you look at 2020, your water and sewer fund pays $451,000 a year in total debt service. And that number, if we go through these financings by 2028, will increase to $736,000 a year in debt service. So that's really my task, is to give you rates that'll generate enough money to pay new debts and pay your operations. And I can go to slide 9. Slide 9 is this is a quick summary last year of your customer classes and how they paid in versus how much water they used. And I'll start with in the red, residential inside city limits. They've contributed 40% of the revenue of the system, and they used 44% of the water. So they're in the red because they received a subsidy. Where did they receive that from? Well, commercial inside city limits paid in 32% of the money and used 28% of water. So it's very tight, but there is a slight subsidy there, and that's important to identify, because we have to, number one, I think we're missing some commercial accounts, but number two, we have to be aware that your commercial rates, they are paying their share. So when we give you rate recommendations, I just want you to be aware of that. I'll move to slide 10. Slide 10 is a peer group comparison of Pearsall versus 14 other cities in the area for 5,000 gallons of residential water and sewer. And what you'll see is, with the exception of Petula, you're the lowest price water sewer, even after the 5-year rates that you implement. I will add that the numbers here do not reflect the surcharge that you just repealed. They only reflect the rates that you have adopted for them. So at 5,000 gallons, you're at $46.31 for water sewer, almost $10 cheaper than the peer group average of $55. If you'll go to slide 11, it's the same information, but for 10,000 gallons a month, which is closer to the average user in Pearsall. 10,000 gallons a month, the peer group's right at $80 a month bill for water sewer. You're at $59.50. You're $20 below the peer group average, and the lowest in the peer group with the exception of Petula. So you can demonstrate to your residential customers that they're getting a good value for their water and sewer service. If there's no questions, I'll move to slide 12.
I have a question, Jeff. Jeff, how do these rates compare to Divine, Hondo, and Vital? Do we know that? You there?
Yes, sir, I'm here. Those three cities do not believe report to TML, which conducts a statewide survey. That's where I get my comparison figures from. So I'm unable to answer that. Did you say Divine, Lytle, and where in Honda?
Yeah, Divine, Hondo, and Lytle.
They use the, co-op, yeah, yes, from San Antonio South.
Sauce. They're probably comparable to sauce.
Yeah, they have a contract with them.
You like me in the next presentation to reach out to those cities and get their ordinances and add those cities to the 15-member peer group comparison.
You can do it?
Yeah, we can get them, Jeff. If you could help us with that, Jeff, that would be great. You could help us with those numbers. I think they're paying a lot more than any of our other partners here, these other cities we compare it to, but we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong.
So it would be
I've made the note to add Lytle, Hondo, and Divine to the list of peer group members. And I'll be glad to do that. Slide. There's a lot of information here, but I'd like to ask you to look at the middle column, which is called average meter consumption per account. Do you see that? That's 1, 2, 3, 4 columns over from the year. And I just want to draw your attention to the period 2008 to 2011. Average residential consumption was roughly 12,000 gallons a month. Since 2015, it's dropped to 7,008. Last year, it was 7,875 gallons a month. A huge drop in residential consumption, even during the time when you got brand new meters. A little concerning, and I'll reserve comment on that for another longer discussion.
I have a comment, Mayor.
Go ahead, Councilman.
Sir, do you know if you've asked the question that on that big drop off that you have? I'm not talking about Johnson Control. I'm talking about why so many less residential accounts. I see it's a lot. It's like at least 4,000 or 5,000. Is it because we're not counting them right, or is it because Johnson Control is not doing them right?
Well, so going back to 2008, I found that you had 2,095 residential inside city limit customers. 2,095, and last year you had an average of 1,712, so 400 accounts have declined from 08, from 11 years from 08 to 2019. I am not sure why that decline has taken place, but what I can tell you is your production of water into the system from your wells has been the same. So you have less customers using less waters, but you're producing the same amount of water from your wells that you did in 2008, 9, and 10, and 11. It's a puzzle that we have to work to solve.
the geo.
It's more than the geo.
That's when they came in.
It's more than the geo, but yes, that's part of the problem.
What's the rest of the problem?
We could reserve that for an executive session.
If the council is ready, I'm glad to move to slide 13.
Go ahead.
Slide 13 and 14 provide a similar peer group comparison, but for your commercial accounts, for combined service at 50,000 and 200,000 gallons per month. You'll see that You're lower than the mid peer group average, but not the cheapest. But the peer group average for 50,000 gallons, you're at $433. Pearsall's at $275. So you're roughly $150 less on commercial for 50,000 gallons. Going to slide 14, for 200,000 gallon a month users of water and sewer, the peer group's at $1,630. You're at $975, so your commercial customers are billed at roughly $700 a month less than the peer group. So again, you can demonstrate good value to your commercial customers for the service. I'll move to slide 15. This is the same depiction that we just talked about with residential, but for commercial. And I'll just point out, in 2008 to 2011, your commercial customers use roughly 50 to 60,000 gallons a month per account. And since 2015, that's dropped to 25,000, 23,000 gallons per month. And need to understand why. And we have done some preliminary work. We know that there are some large volume customers that their consumption may not be interfacing correctly with your billing system. And we're trying to understand that. That is a to be continued conversation while we do some investigation. But I can tell you that if those commercial customers came online that I think are missing, it would add roughly $80,000 to $100,000 a year to your revenue. So it's worth the effort to figure this out. If you have no questions, I'll move to slide 16. Slide 16 just shows you, if you did not change your rates, if you left them exactly where they are at today and you issued all this debt, how would your system perform? And you can see that beginning in 2022, you would have $140,000 deficit. By 2025, your deficit would be $220,000. So if you're going to finance the projects, you do have to make some rate adjustments. And I'll address that in the next slides, starting with slide 17. Slide 17 is my rate recommendation, and this is actually the impact on the average bill for your average customer. I'm going to use a 10,000 gallon a month customer for water and sewer. They're currently at $59.50. Now I would propose that you adopt rates that raise that monthly rate by $2.24. So $59.50 on October 1. The average rate will go to $61.75. That's a $2.24 increase. October 1 of 2021, that would go up another $2.25, and so forth for a 5-year period. So what you would be imposing on your customers would be a 3.5% annual increase over 5 years, which equates to $2.25 increase in the monthly bill. I'm going to pause to answer any questions on that rate recommendation. Now keep in mind, or I'll repeat that there's no action to be taken tonight, so we've got plenty of time for the council to give me instructions on alternatives on the rates, but this is my first draft presentation. I'll move to slide 18. Slide 18 shows if you were to adopt the rates that I've recommended and the rest of the cities surrounding you raise their rates by 3% a year, how would you look by 2025? And what this demonstrates is you would still be one of the lowest in the peer group. I'll go to slide 19, which is my proposed commercial water and sewer rate increases. Roughly 3.5% for them, which equates to an average of about $10 for a 50,000 gallon commercial account. A 10,000 gallon commercial account, like a barber shop, something smaller, we're proposing their bill would go up by about $2.80 a month. 50,000 gallon customer would go up by $10.30. I'll use the 50,000 gallon. They're currently at $275 a month. We go to $284 beginning October 1. The following October, they go to $294 and so on. It would gradually transition them up 3.5% per year over the 5 years, similar to what we discussed with residential. If you look at slide 20 gives you the same forecast in 25 of a peer group comparison, assuming that the remaining peer group members raise rates by 3% per annum. By the way, the way I get that is American Water Works Association does a national survey every year, and they ask water utility managers, what do you anticipate you will raise rates by? And typically it's 4 to 5%, so I consider the 3% modest. However, what this demonstrates is that you will still have very competitive commercial rates after the 5 years. I'll move to slide 21. This shows your cash flows under these rates, and these rates would make you cash flow positive, and it would not throw off a tremendous amount of surplus. You would still have a lean system, but you would be able to pay for your capital projects that you're imposing. I will add something. You see the third row down from the top called total expenses? Those are being increased by about 3.5% a year. If you did several years in a row of raising your expenses by 10%, 12% a year, like we talked about before, the plan doesn't work. The rates would not be sufficient. You would have to actively manage your expense increases over the 5 years while you're raising your rate. That is my presentation, and I ended my prepared statements, and I'm glad to answer any questions.
Mayor,
Yes, Councilman Goodman.
yes, ma'am, this goes to the city council. I wish that, really study this, proposal, this, draft that, I've put together. I trust Jeff, I brought him in, the council brought him in 2012, when he did a first rate study, and it was a very effective rate study for all of Pearsall. Let's go back to the comments that some of the council members had made, Mr. Snowden, to hurry up with the rate study. But he already did what he had to do on his first draft, and it looked very promising. But I think that if you notice how many times we mentioned controls, that Johnson Controls, like I said, I know very little about them. I know that they signed a real big contract with the city of Pearsall to try to implement, try to save money for the city of Pearsall. But according to this rate study, I think it's going backwards instead of going forward. So this goes out to the city council, and I think that we need to really step it up and put those guys on the agenda next week to see what is really going on. Hey, Jeff.
Any other questions? Agreed.
Well, Jeff, if we can, what I'd like to do with the council is go back to page 7. We talked about current and proposed debt obligations. We talked about the proposed debt obligations. Again, just to make sure I understand from the council, and again, I wish I could tell you that I had a comprehensive list of all the projects, but to be quite frank, this is what I've gathered since the time I've been here. And what I see again is I know we have to move forward on some of the projects. For sure, I'm asking the council if we can at least drill one water well, look at a design, the 2021 year, 2020, 2021, we look at a design for a water well. I do need to reach back out to staff to make sure we identify the well we want to drill, because there's 2 that we're looking at. So in that, if you look at that second to the bottom, Series 2022 water wells, if you divide that in half, if we just drill one, it's half of that, okay? So it's about $1.1 million to drill a new water well. So again, that's one project I'd ask the council to consider in the immediate. The other one, the other couple we discussed again was the utility extension project if you were to finance, if you want to move forward with that financing for the next series, which I guess would be 2021, we could replace that, because he has, if you look at it, he has 2021 capital projects at 845,000. He has a water wells, I say he, Jeff, I'm sorry, I'm saying, we have the water wells as 2022, and that being, those would be the first projects we would do if we want to move forward. And then you have the 2027 and 2028 projects that would be later on down the road. And so what I'm suggesting to the council is if we do one water well, what I need the council, some direction from the council is moving forward with that, but also including either the capital projects and or the utility extension to move that up in the flow of projects. So again, it's open for discussion, but I would like to hear from the council, particularly on the utility extension.
What are the two capital projects you said?
The capital projects, I think we had a list of items that went out last week of all the capital projects that we identified. I have to pull that information.
Oh, okay.
But I think it was a list of, I want to say at least 5 or 6 projects. And those would be that number of capital projects. I think it included some water and sewer line replacements. It also included some work out at the wastewater treatment plant. And again, that's where that's at. And those were all identified by staff, the 2021 capital projects. What I'm not sure of, and I say I'm not sure of, and I want to get some clarification is that utility extension project. And if Bobby can maybe help, I'm sorry, if Bobby can help as far as the requirements as far as annexation, that would probably be helpful too, to explain to the council how many years we have to possibly get that project going.
The council there, Bobby?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I apologize. I'm having a lot of trouble with my coughing. And I apologize. I just had to step out. So what is the question, Fred? Is it related to how much time the city has to make improvements after an annexation?
The annexation, yes, sir. After the approved annexation, yes, sir. I know we touched on it some time back, but I don't know if the council recalls the annexation plan.
Simply put, it's a 2.5 years. However, if the city is making substantial improvement, the city is given a total of 4.5 years to make the improvements. And that's if the city is after 4.5 years, is it pretty much there with what it needs to do to bring the service levels consistent with what the rest of the community is receiving, then the city is pretty much in good shape. Otherwise, of course, you're subject to disannexation proceedings with petitions and so forth.
And that's 4.5 years from the time that the annexation was approved, Bobby?
Yes. It's when the annexation took place. That's why there were discussions at the time consistent with coming up with estimates of probable costs, and that's some of what Jeff talked about, some of what you talked about. Those numbers were ascertained. However, you've got to follow up with that and determine exactly what additional revenues are going to be coming in post-annexation. Stay on top of that, because that revenue does have to be dedicated in part to financing those improvements that need to be made.
Mayor,
Yes, Councilman.
I went up here, I guess I can only talk, I didn't see nobody on the screen. Anyway, I'll recommend to the council, I know it is a discussion item, and I think we owe it to the people that were annexed, all those people, commercial and residential, that were annexed into the city of Pearson. I think we owe it to them, since we are collecting sales and property tax on them. And we move up that project for the water, sewer, and gas extensions. Also, you will be receiving a letter probably tomorrow or today, from Trailboss. Trailboss is that company that's, has a big contract with, the federal government, the Immigration Transport. They're very upset and concerned with, the water service that's out there. They should have sent a letter today or tomorrow. So, like I said, so we need to, as a council, we need to act on it as soon as possible to try to move up, the water well, move it up, at least one, as Mr. Reyes says, at 1.1 million. Then also the water extension, because I don't think they can wait until 2027 on those utility extensions out there for the annexation.
Just to give a brief calculation to the council, if we do the one water well, the extension, we're talking about $3.7 million, give or take. If you add the projects that staff identified, you're talking about $4.5 million of debt issuance. So I just want to make sure on that end, the council's aware of the math. I'm sure you may have already calculated it in your head, but that's what we're talking about, is issuance of debt and when we want to issue it. So again, we need to at some point give some direction to Mr. Snowden so we can put those into the model to identify, to do something with whatever it is we need to do as far as our assumptions as far as our rates.
Well, I would like to ask you to get consent from the council if they could, I know it's not a voting item, but if we can get consent, see if we can move up on prioritized list of the new water well, also the water sewer extension with the annex property out there, past Ace Hardware, all the way out that was annexed last year. That's if we can get a consent from the council.
And you said that project would be 3 point, how much million?
Both of those projects that we're talking about, the extension and the extension in one of the water wells is approximately $3.7 million.
3.7 million.
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
Mr. Reyes, did LMB leave any kind of specs or plans or anything for the extension out there?
They may have, I don't recall, and I think all I've given y'all was the linear feet, but I know that didn't go into design. If anything, it may have been some sort of a schematic that they gave to the council. Again, I don't know, I'd have to look back to see
I think
what
there
the
is some
design.
kind of schematic that they presented to us in terms of what was required,
Yeah.
what was needed, and
Yes, sir.
then what numbers we needed to produce in terms of revenue. and things done.
Yes, sir. And I'm sure the revenue projection, I think, I don't know that I would recommend LFB's projection simply because there's a lot more assumptions that Mr. Snowden made that you have to look at as far as the addition, well, how you acquire the revenue, right? So I feel comfortable with Mr. Snowden's assumptions with the understanding that we give the list of projects and the priority and the time frame of the projects. I feel pretty good that he'll give us a good assumption.
The other question I have, sir, is if we do the well and the utility extension, does that put the other 2021 capital projects on hold, or can we do some of that as well?
Yes, that would be just to address that issuance would be just to address the projects that we're identifying. We want to do another issuance, and one of the things the finance director and I discussed is once we fix our problem with our water meters, is maybe have Jeff come back in a couple of years, once we've already completed some of the projects, so we can reassess where we are as far as our revenues and our rates, and then go out for another issuance if we want to. But we do have to address some of the issues as it relates to our meters and billing. And we know we recognize there's some issues there, but again, that is probably a discussion for another day. But yes, sir.
Okay, last question. Here, the PNC equipment finance for the advanced meter payment,
Yes,
is that the existing meter that we have?
that is
the
exactly
lease?
that's exactly right.
Okay.
Yes.
Councilman, can I respond to that question on the PNC finance?
Yes, sir.
I was just gonna add that, the PNC finance obligation right now, you pay every year on that. 1 minute, please. 130,000 going up about 5,000 a year. So this year it's 130,000, next year will be 135,000. And those payments stay with you until 2027. So that's your obligation. I believe that the meters were got in 14 and went through 20 or 15 and you have the payment obligation through 2027.
So to issue this.
Mayor, there's no further questions. Can I have a consent from the council, Mayor? See if we can prioritize the new water well and the water extension for the annex property.
On the new water well or the new,
And the, new one new water well, 1.1, then the, annex property that was annexed last year. And when Jeff can put those numbers into his, rate study. That's gonna consent from the council.
it's no action, he said he wanted a consent. Because you can put it on the agenda without a consent and let the council vote on it. But right now, I think people are somewhat perplexed on, what you're asking.
He wants a directive.
Yes.
Yeah, he wants a directive from the council.
Mayor and council, I guess on that end, where we're going with this is for us to put a rate structure together, we need some idea of when we want to issue debt, if we're going to issue any at all, and the amount of debt. If we're going to issue the $3.7 million, if we're going to do it next year, and that's going to, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, but that's going to affect the assumptions of your rate structure. But again, that's kind of where we're at with it from a priority standpoint. It's not that you're never going to issue the debt. It's just if you issue something, it's going to be sooner than the 2027 timeframe. It's on the.
Question. So all of this that's presented to us, about 4.8% increase each year, right? Does that encompass all of the projects that are listed, or now we have to pick a certain number of projects to total certain amount of money?
I'll answer a little bit, Jeff, and then I'll let you answer. What it is the percentage increase is your increase for all the projects as to when you actually issue the debt. That's gonna affect the amount that's gonna be paid. For instance, if you issue debt next year, those payments are gonna be due in 2022. So if you issue debt next year, you have to find the dollars to pay for that debt issuance in 2022. So again, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, I may be speaking out of turn there, but anyway, I'll let you add to that if you want.
Mr. Reyes had answered Councilman's question, and slide 7 really gives you a good summary response. But what I have provided are rates that are sufficient to get you through 2025. That is why the utility extension and the hydraulic model projects I've pushed out to 27 and 28, because the rates I've proposed, you can't afford those financing under those rates. That's assuming that you have to finance 100% of them and you don't get any forgiveness from Water Development Board. And the other assumption is that none of these projects result in new accounts coming online which generate more money. We investigate the utility extension projects for 2027 and learn that there's 150 new accounts sitting out there waiting for service. That's revenue that makes it much more doable. Hope that answers your question, Council.
It does, sir. Is it possible to get a projection on, everything including the utility extension and the hydraulic model projects, as to what percentage, we're at 4.8% increase annually. If we wanted to do everything, in other words, what would it look like?
5-year projection?
5-year projection. Because we kind of need to start planning some of these projects and start looking at initial phases of some of these, even if it's just design. I'm not sure.
To bring in those two projects prior to 2025, those two projects, I'm talking about the Series 27 utility extension,
Right.
and that annual debt service for that is $130,000 a year. The hydraulic model projects, that's another $55,000. And I need to add again on the hydraulic model projects. That's from a hydraulic model that was developed by L&D in excuse me, I want to give you the right information, but I believe it was 2014. It might even been later than that. It's an old model. I don't know that you would want to seriously consider financing that until you updated that. And when I looked at it, I'm not so sure that some of those projects might not have already been done. So that's why I pushed them out, because you really need to get another set of eyes on that to make sure those projects have been done or that they're still needed.
Yeah, what if we do this and
See that now.
we include the utility extension, one of the water wells, and the capital projects, and push everything else out.
Yeah, excuse me, so the hydraulic model that will be prepared was dated September 21, 2012. It's an 8-year-old list of projects. So it would be, I wouldn't be doing my job if I asked you to prepare to finance that until we drill down and make sure those projects are still needed or they haven't already been implemented.
Jeff, did you hear my request, I guess?
Was that Fred?
If we included the capital projects, the $845,000 into this rate model, the one water well and the utility extension, I think the total is, give or take, about $4.5 million, give or take, between those projects. If we included in that into a 5-year model, what that would look like.
I just want to repeat what you just said, so, and I can give you a response to that now. You're proposing that the utility expansion, the extension, that take place sooner, and I'm going to put it, I'll try to put it 2022. Almost there. Okay, that's one. And then Fred, you're saying that we would just want to do one water well?
Right.
Not both, not two?
Right, so Jeff, can I make this kind of simple for you, Jeff? I'm gonna try to make this simple. If we do the capital projects and one water well with Series 2021, unless, I'm gonna try to I guess make it simple. If we do that, the capital projects and the water well, put that in one series, and then the utility extension in 2022 as the other series. Does that make sense?
It does, showing about an $84,000 shortfall in 2022. Then we become cash flow positive in 2023, so we would need to come up a little shorter of the current rates to make that work.
Does that sound okay to the council? I don't know if that's feasible.
Sounds
Yeah.
good.
If you could,
It's doable, and then the other thing is, if you have the same outcome with Water Development Board that some of your peer group cities have, where they submitted on the project and got forgiveness, then all of a sudden, these projects, the financing under the rates are much more doable.
That'll work. Well, if you could help us with that, I'd appreciate it.
Any further questions?
I have a comment, one more comment,
Would you say, Councilman?
one more comment, ma'am.
Yes, you can have a
Yes, this is for Jeff. Jeff, on those rate studies, you, put in the study, the design of the project, and let's say for the annexation, the water extension. You put a design cost there?
Yes, I did. I used LNB's cost estimate that they provided when they gave us those costs.
And how much was that?
It was for the line extension. 1 minute, please. Full engineering, surveying, permits, and inspection was $280,000 included in that. So 2.1 million, 2.2 million became 2.479 with those fees. That
Mayor, just keep in mind, hear me, Mayor? Just keep in mind that, still have the $460,000, the 2016 bond, that, we didn't do for the drainage project on, drainage on 1582. We were supposed to do it, and the LMB put that bid, and we turned it down. That money's been sitting there for going on, 5 years, 4 years for sure, and going on 5. But we have that money, and we can, easily amend it, you know, to do the rate study. I mean, I'm sorry, the study, the design for this, annexation. Will save us some money there.
that's half a water well.
There you go. And we have it on hand. It's been sitting there for a while.
Jeff, one other thing, just want to remind the council, the meetings with Jeff is scheduled for June 16th, so this is just one half of his show. He will be back on the 16th to give you solid waste and, what other one am I forgetting? I think.
Natural gas.
Gas, so this is just one half of the show. Thanks.
Alrighty. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Councilman Segovia.
Cowboys.
Okay, moving on to 4B. Discuss and consider ordinance number 2020-05-02, adopting a decorum policy, providing a severability clause, providing a saving clause, providing a penalty, and providing for an effective date. This is an action item. Need to entertain a motion to discuss, please.
Motion to discuss?
Second.
In favor?
Mayor, this is a policy that, Mayor and Council, this has been a policy that's been brought to the council, I think at least 3 occasions, maybe more. But I think we put the final touches on the policy. And so what we have is the final version. A couple of things since the last time we brought this to the council, a couple of changes. One, let me go make sure to go over the ordinance. Of course, it's all there. The section 5 there is a penalty clause associated with this ordinance. So I just want to make sure the council is aware of that. That's on page 3. On section 5 penalty clause, I think it's $500 for the offense, fine not to exceed $500. So I want to make sure the council is aware of that ordinance and the terms. The other couple items that we changed, and there wasn't many to the last one that we introduced to the council, was on page 6 under 1-110. I believe if you look at section B there, It references the change, I think, the one, two, three, four, the fourth sentence there says one member of the council who is requesting that item. I think we changed that from 3 to 1 at the direction of the city attorney. So that's now changed in this ordinance. And then the other is, I believe page 16, under section 1.220. I think the request was made to put, to reference the charter there. The city council, in accordance with section 3.1 of the charter, may pursue other corrective measures for violations of this policy. So that is now included into the policy. Aside from that, there's nothing else that I'm aware of. I would ask again on the council, some of the way we introduce items next meeting, for instance, will change. Meaning there won't be a need to ask for a motion to open an item. If somebody puts an item, I think the logic is if somebody puts an item on the agenda, there's no need for a motion because somebody felt it was important enough to discuss it, whether it was a mayor, city manager, or council members. So there won't be a need to motion to open up an item. That's probably the biggest change you'll see. Again, I would ask that you, the council, we may, when Bobby feels better, we may ask him to kind of go over a brief summary of some of these things, and particularly Robert's rules. So if you have any questions between here and there, feel free to.
What page are you talking about, the last comment you made?
That's under the general procedures of the meeting. It's under. It's under procedure of promotions, on page 4. And I have to look because I know it's in here. It references obtaining the floor motions.
On page 1, page 3, general procedures.
Page 4, page 9 and 44.
Page 8 of 44, sorry.
Page 8 and 44, it talks about the actual, the process as far as how the meetings will go. Call to order, invocation, pledge of allegiance, presentations, persons to be heard, consent agendas, old business. It references everything, but there's no, again, under this, once an item is on the floor, there's no need, if the mayor calls an item, introduces it, and by that time, there's no need to discuss, the motion to discuss the item. In fact, you've already have it on the agenda for discussion, or for discussion and action. So I know it's in here, but I know I have to find that particular piece. But that's probably the biggest change the council has to be used to as far as addressing items as they come to the council. I'll find it.
Is on page 10 or 44, is that just a typo there on K? Continuous discussion or hearings, any item being discussed or any public hearing of the city council meeting made by order, notice, or motion by continued, or should we be continued?
Which page again?
10 of 44, discontinued.
Page 10 of 44, item K.
B.
Should it be BE or BY?
Any items being discussed or any public hearing at a city council meeting made by order. Notice or motion be continued.
Or
Be continued.
It's B continued.
Be continued. Yes, that's be continued.
Okay.
Let me go back to this, but I know on this, it does reference processes for the council. Let's do this, if council would like, if you want to approve this, and I will investigate that piece a little bit further with the understanding.
Public hearings,
I'm sorry?
you think it's under public hearings?
No, I know that it referenced it. I've never seen I'll be quite frank, other cities, I've never seen the process of having an item on the agenda and then opening it up for discussion and voting on it. Again, I'm not saying that I'm right, I'm just saying that I've never seen to open up an item for discussion. But again, let me look at that with the under exception of that. I think everything else has been done, but I'll look into that.
We can, motion?
Yes.
I'll move that, we adopt ordinance number 2020-0502, adopting a decorum policy for city council.
Finding the stipulation we just discussed.
Oh. The possible. Addition.
Clarification, maybe
Possible
clarification.
clarification
To that,
There's a motion on the table, may I have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor? I say. Ms. Obi, you still with us?
Hey,
You say yay?
hey,
Yes? No?
yes.
Yes, you say yes. Okay. You said eight.
1, 2, 3,
Okay.
4, 5.
That's all. So motion passes. All right, we're moving on to 4C, discuss and consider ordinance number 2020-05-03, amending the adopted budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2019. Action item. Motion to discuss.
Second.
All in favor? Yes, sir.
Hey.
Mayor, council members, you have before you or an ordinance to amend the budget, bringing $913,057 from government capital financing. This item will be used to finance the vehicles and the computers that were previously approved in other meetings. It's a 5-year contract with annual payments of $109,932.46 beginning on May 20th, 2021 through May 20th, 2025. In year 2, 3, and 4, there is an option to prepay this item. So, depending on our fiscal or financial position, I do plan to recommend that we prepay. I'm here to answer any questions that we may have.
I have a question.
Okay.
Sir, what is the purpose of amending the budget?
Without amending the budget, we can't issue a PO. Since the budget was created July of last year, and we base our budget on zero-based budget, we have to bring in the revenue that will be realized, and I have to add line items within the budget to be able to distribute the funds.
So how's that gonna work? Is that gonna tie up this money in any way, or is it for appeal purpose?
It's gonna come in and it's gonna go out to purchase the vehicles. Yes, as soon as the vehicles are received, we'll pay for them. As soon as the computers are received, we'll pay for them with these funds, and those line items get eliminated coming year. And for the coming budget, we're going to 2021. We'll have that line item for these payments.
Any other questions?
Make a motion.
Yes, sir.
Move that we approve ordinance number 2020-0503 to amend the adopted budget fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2019, for the sum of $513,057.
There's a motion on the table. May I have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Yay.
Yay.
Yeah.
Councilman Segovia?
Second, yes.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. You did say it. Okay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, sir. Discuss and consider naming our city hall building after former city manager, civic leader, Pepe Trevino.
Motion to discuss.
Second? All in favor?
Yay.
Mayor and council, on page 35 of your packet, well, actually it starts on page 34, but on page 35 of your packet, you can see the guidelines for naming of public facilities. I think that was brought to the council, I want to say a year or two back anyway, but it references a couple of reasons, that criteria, and one of the criteria mentions an individual living or deceased who has contributed outstanding civic service to the city of Pearsall. From what I gather, and I think we received, and he's actually on the call, Mr. Trevino, I think he submitted some information he wanted to consider us, have us consider naming this facility after, across the street after Mr. Trevino. So the criteria is there, the procedures are there. I think it references, the procedure says the city council may upon its own initiative name or rename a facility without following these guidelines. So you could very well name the facility whatever you want. There's been some discussion, I think, one being that you name it after somebody, the other one has been, but you just leave it as City Hall and not name it after anyone. Again, I just need some clarification. The reason I brought this is because we do have to start with the signage. We have to start ordering and doing whatever it is we're going to do as far as the facility. We're to the point where we need to start putting the name, whatever it's going to be, and then just moving forward with whatever decision is made tonight.
Discussion, council? There is a, Jeff Snowden, but that's Ronaldo, right?
Yeah, Trevino.
Mr. Trevino, can't hear you.
Can you unmute?
He's on mute.
Oh, we're going to unmute him.
Hold on, you did it.
You hear me there?
Now we can hear you.
All right. So, let me reference guidelines quickly. The guideline Mr. Reyes mentioned basically is two kinds of ways of naming a building. Someone that donates a lot of money or land, like Mr. Pearsall, I don't know if he was children, or someone that is that lives here and has provided, civic duty to the community. So Pepe Trevino, City Hall, for example, was an outstanding civic leader. He was born 1943, died in 2020 this year. He was a Pearsall native. So what I'm going to do right now in the next few minutes is talk to you about his character. And I know a lot of people know him, but I want to make sure that we're all on the same page on what we say and why we're saying it and the recommendation. So as a native, by the way, a UT fan and a Cowboy fan, son of the Wishing Well owner. The Wishing Well, some of you might know, was a outstanding or long-term dance hall here for a lot of people, a lot of singers in the 70s. He was a high school graduate, Pearsall High School graduate. He was a Navy veteran. He worked in the business field. So I'm building a character that he was not a slouch. He was someone that really worked hard all his life. In terms of service, with me, I'm at the courthouse right now with Carlos Segura, and Juan's here as well. Here supporting Pepe Trevino. And we support him because he was in the school board. He was our president in the 90s with me. Carlos was also on the school board. Proven leadership as the president of the school board. In our tenure, we passed a high school bond to renew and rebuild a high school. You might say, well, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal was that school had been rebuilt since the 60s. And after we built the high school, it started a tradition. Almost every building has either been rebuilt or built again. So we have a pretty good school system facility-wise. So we started that trend. Now, the other city was, he was a Pearsall city manager. He didn't have to be a city manager. He came to the rescue of the city in the year 2015 when we had some problems with the city. I'm not going to get into those issues, but really, he came when the city was in turmoil. And he got us out of that turmoil. And his leadership was evident throughout his tenure. And I think that even your municipal codes that you've been talking about were supported and he by Pepe, and he built and write some of those codes. Your code book, that's what it says. It thanks Pepe for supporting the municipal code, the rewriting of that. So Pepe, when he came here, he was really already retired, right? He gave his time to the city when he was asked, and he delivered. And retired people, some retired people usually stay retired. He didn't, not Pepe, a leader and a servant of Pearsall. We should honor our Pearsall residents. We should give back to those people that made a contribution to the city. And we should honor those people. And maybe one of these days we'll honor some people that are on the council or in the future, but I think if you put your time in, we should honor you in a way so that we say, you know what, this is ours, we grew ours. I mean, I could say, well, other people, like Pearsall, the name Pearsall itself, I mean, the reason we have that again was because it was money, or he bought the land. But the policy that we currently have says we can do it two ways. Someone that does civic duty or someone that contributes. And Pepe did that, a good portion of his life. And I think we owe him that. And I think it would be, the naming of the hall would distinguish our city hall from all other city halls that want to be the same. We will be unique. I think we will be unique in naming him a building after him. And I think I urge the council to consider this today, or if we want to have another discussion, we can have that in the future. But I think Pepe would be a great contributor to the naming of our city hall. Questions? I mean, I'm just going by the guidelines that are provided. They're pretty subjective. There's no really objective criteria. There's no measuring of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's either he did civic duty or he didn't. And I think every one of you guys there knows that he did a lot of civic duty. And I know he did a lot of civic duty, a lot of long nights at the school board, sometimes till midnight.
Thank you.
Mayor, that's what I have. I didn't want to be too lengthy because to get political reporting, so I don't want to do that.
Thank you. Any other discussion, questions, comments?
Mayor, we would ask, I haven't, sorry, Mr. Sylvia, I haven't reached out to his wife, and I know, matter of fact, Councilman Yepto suggested that he was one of the ones that maybe, if we were gonna do this, that we reach out to the wife. I wanted to make sure that the council we had a consensus before I reached out to her. And if the council directs me to issue, I'd like to do it in the form of a resolution and list some things and make sure his wife is available when we do this. But again, it's up to the council as far as, what it is we want to do. I know it's something that you need to consider, but anyway, that's why I haven't reached out to any of the family or anything, so.
So you want us to table this until you reach out?
Well, I would like for some direction, so if the council wants to approve and name it after him, I could reach out to her, and we can bring it back as a resolution and honor it in the form of a resolution.
Mayor, no comment.
Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am, I totally agree with Reynaldo Trevino. Like 12 years that I was in the council, Pepe was the one that would come to the rescue when a city manager would get fired or quit in the city of Pearsall. Without hesitation, he would step up and be our interim city manager for a good 4, 5, 6 months, and then he would train the new city manager would come in, and he did a great job. And I totally agree with Mr. Trevino. He is from Pearsall. He retired and came back to Pearsall. And as a matter of fact, Mr. Reyes, right before Mr. Trevino passed away, Mr. Reyes was reaching out to him on some stuff that he needed help with. Unfortunately, at that time, his health had already deteriorated. He couldn't really help us out. But this guy was always ready to help us out at a moment's notice. And I would not hesitate to name the new building after Jose D. Pepe Trevino. And all Mr. Reyes is asking for is a motion with the understanding that we invite his wife and with a resolution about naming the building.
I thought that we're gonna name this one after him, not the new.
I don't know as far as what facility.
But I'm not concerned, I mean, we were doing this building, not that building.
I mean, however the council wants to move forward, I'm open. I mean, I don't know, it could say, it says, the policy says any building, so you could name whatever building you wanted to after. It's just a matter of which one, to us, it's either here or there. We can name it the annex, the cafe, the new annex building, and then, just keep that a city hall. However it is the council wants to do it, whatever, I do it.
I think that annex building belongs to the citizens of Pearsall.
So you guys
Yeah.
need consensus on which building, first of all. And on the agenda, it says the new building next door. So that's what the new city hall building, so that's what's on the agenda.
Mayor, I would like to make a motion.
Proceed,
Ma'am?
go ahead.
Yes, I would like to make a motion that we name the new annex building after Jose D. Pepe Trevino for his service and civic duty that he gave to the city of Pearsall during his lifetime. That's my motion, Mayor.
Second. I'd like to second it.
It's a new city hall building. New
This is
city
the
hall.
new,
New City Hall.
New city hall, okay, just want to make sure.
The new City Hall.
all in favor by saying, well, I have to see it,
What was the motion?
to name this building,
Motion
across the
to-
street after Pepe.
The-
So it's gonna be
The new
Trevino City Hall?
What's that be?
Jose D. Pepe Trevino City Hall.
We can come up with the logistics of the name, but we understanding that his name will be included as part of that.
So Pearsall City
It's
Hall?
the same thing as the sports complex. Everybody knows it's Victor Trevino, but people call it Trevino Sports Complex. It's not big difficult, it's very simple. Jose D. Pepe Trevino, that'll be the name of the building, and then people wanna call it Pepe's building, they wanna call it Trevino's building, whatever, let it be. That's my motion, Mayor.
So call it Pearsall City Hall.
Yes. It will include his name somehow, yes.
Okay. There's a motion and a second, all in favor?
Yay.
That's 4 and 1 against. Motion carries. Okay. So moving on to 4E, discussion and possible action regarding resolution number 2020-05-02 to approve an increase on the monthly contribution to the Texas Emergency Service Retirement System on behalf of the Pearsall Volunteer Fire Department. Motion to discuss, please.
Motion to discuss.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Mayor and Council, this item, actually, the fire chief asked me to put this item on the agenda, where he provided us the information, so I did. To be quite frank, I don't have all the information as it relates to this increase. Apparently, there's some different, I guess, the increase, I think there were some discrepancies there as to how much we were gonna increase per year. So in saying that, I don't know, the chief is is he on the call?
No.
He's not on the call. I'd asked him to be on the call.
I'll table this.
Yeah, better to table it, because I would like to hear the council hear from him, so I'd ask for a table today.
He's not calling.
I'm sorry?
He's not calling.
No, I asked him earlier in the day to call in, and apparently he's not on the call.
Can we look into
Mayor.
two things?
Yes.
Can we look into, because last time we understood, as they explained to the council, that going up to 90 would catch them up, whatever that meant. And then also in this contribution request, its effective date, and he's got listed January 1st, 2020. Right. I don't know if we can even make that retroactive to that point, because the last one we approved was in May, so I think this one has to start in May.
We could look and ask the question to see why we didn't have it. I mean, I don't have enough information to do on this
All
item.
right, well, I motion to table this item.
Can I have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. Councilman Segovia?
I'm
Councilman?
against, because it was a very easy issue. All they were asking for is 100% of the benefits, and it's coming from the EDC. It's not even coming from us. It's a very simple, but I don't know why Councilman Hernandez is so much against it. He knows what it's about. He's the one who voted against it before. Well, I don't know why he's making such a big deal about it.
I'm not against it, sir, I just want more information, and
Voted against it before, sir.
well, there's somebody on the phone to answer the questions.
So
But they should have already known
motion
for the past 5 years.
carries 4 to 1. To table. Okay, discuss and consider Trevino Streets traffic study and proposed recommendation. It's an action item. Motion to discuss, please.
Motion to discuss.
Motion.
Second. Okay, all in favor? Yes, Peter.
Yes, ma'am. This was some traffic studies that you guys had asked for about possible traffic control devices being added to these areas for possibly problem traffic areas. It's actually the next two items, I think.
So Trevino and Renal, we put together.
Right.
Okay.
Together. On Trevino Street, it's going to be the same block range that we recently did with Garcia Street. We see kind of the same problem there with children that get dropped off after school by the bus in that area, and they walk through that area. It's also the street that connects with Louise Lane, so we have seen a lot more traffic from the neighborhood coming to HEB through there. So I would suggest possibly that stop sign being added there. If you look at your packet at Christie Street, at a minimum, I think that would get it done. You guys did eventually decide on speed bumps on Garcia. I didn't include speed bumps on here, but if that's something you guys are thinking about, I can see the benefit to that as well, if you choose. And then on Bernal Street, it's a 2-block strip between Medina and Frio. And, I think we've had some complaints about speeders through there also. So they're always going through that intersection. If we can get a stop, done there at Leona, the intersection of Bernal and Leona, that should hopefully solve that issue.
Bernal and Leona
Yeah, Rio and
Yes.
Medina, in between Rio and Medina. So that'll get them one, they drive a block, have to stop, and then drive a block and stop. I think that would,
Chief?
yes, sir.
You're suggesting bumps and stop signs, but your report says that no excessive speed was noted and the traffic is very low in that area. What is it? Is it, we do need it? or do we-
During our observation period, yeah, we didn't observe excessive speeds. We did not.
Okay, so do we need, what do we need?
I am always for traffic control. I think when you have traffic control devices in the area, it's only a safety measure. I'm always for them. If the neighborhood is for them, the residents in that area, I don't see a problem with agreeing to.
So it'll help.
It will definitely help. It will definitely help.
Quick question, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Hey, I finally saw the speed bumps on Grove Street. Congratulations. Hey, what came out cheaper? Speed bumps, the way you did them there, or stop signs?
I wasn't involved on the price side. That would be I guess Hector. He's not here, but I'm not sure which one was cheaper, honestly, to be honest with you.
But, I mean, they work either way because I know on Pecan Street we have stop signs. It's pretty good. And today I was down there on Grove Street and I saw the speed bumps. We got two of them. That's pretty good. So I was just wondering. I mean, either way it works. But I thought it was a good deal.
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So we need a motion to address, we have a question?
I'll make a motion.
For Ian Mackenzie.
I move that we approve proposed recommendations by our Chief Peter Salinas for stop signs and/or speed bumps where needed on Trevino Street and Bernal Street.
We will, just to council know, we will come back with an ordinance for the stop signs. So you will have a stop sign ordinance. So you can approve the action to move forward. And if you want, we'll come back with an ordinance to address the stop signs. Maybe we can.
Can I have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Second.
Motion carries. Alrighty, item 5, city council inquiries for staff or item for future agendas.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
Mayor, I asked last week to put that item for the that child on the Polo Patino Park.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't put on.
Make sure somebody's notating items for the agenda.
Yes, Mayor,
Oh, was that for the monument, for the?
monument,
Yes,
I
sir.
believe that Chris, we talked about that, but I believe there was a clear direction. I think there was some discussions about what, I have to go back and pull the minutes, and we will have the minutes at the June 9th meeting. But I know Crystal and I discussed this, but there was really no clarification as to what we wanted to do out there. So we do need some clarification from the council.
Mayor, that is correct, but that's the reason we put it on the agenda, to have clarification. And it was supposed to be put on this agenda, where it wasn't. But Mr. Reyes is correct.
So on that, and just, if the council would, on our end, if you could help us out, we've met every week pretty much for the past 2 months. We're trying to get caught up with everything going on. I mean, there's a lot we're having to do to prepare for these meetings. And again, we're trying to get all these agenda items. We're trying to get all these agenda items on, but again, I'm asking, because we have time, we still have to prepare for budget. Y'all, we know that's around the corner. I'm asking that we meet our next meeting be June the 9th.
Yes,
I think
June
you have,
the 9th.
I believe you have a council meeting on June the 2nd, but it's just to discuss a conditional use permit That should be minimal, but we really do need some time to prepare for the agenda and the budget. Santos and I and we're gonna be in discussions to discuss the budget. We really do need to start working on that.
So the
So I'd ask
next
Council
meeting,
now.
June 9th.
Yes.
Mayor,
Yes, Councilman.
yes, ma'am, I'm sorry, I have a couple of more. The one that I have is that, according to the rate study that Mr. Snowden gave us, I think we're in desperate need of trying to get answers from, Johnson Controls. I think we can put that item on the agenda. I guess Mr. Reyes can talk more about it in the executive session. I don't know, all the details to it because I wasn't involved. But, we need to put that item on the agenda to see where the losses is, water and sewer rates.
Yes, that is a plan to put that out on the June 9th agenda. And, again, we'll have, probably quite a bit of information for that meeting on the 9th, including some of the budget discussions. If y'all recall on the calendar that I provided last council meeting, I think we were supposed to start discussions on the budget on the 9th as well.
Is June 9th a regular meeting or is it a special meeting?
That is a regular council meeting on the 9th. Again, there's gonna be if we can at least get a form, there's gonna be a meeting on the 2nd for conditional use permits, but it won't be anything as far as a lot of more agenda items on that meeting.
We have one
The
more.
last thing, Mayor, that last comment that I have, another item that was lost in my shuffle of my request of 3 people asking for something on the agenda. Remember we talked a little bit late about the bars, but that one is water under the bridge because governor has already given them the okay, putting at 25% Friday. But that item was never put on the agenda either.
Okay, thank you.
Can I request one item?
Yes.
I want to do a traffic study on Medina Street from Elm to 1581. On that.
And 15.
Did you get that, Mr. Savoy?
I need one other council person to agree.
Did you get that?
I agree.
Okay,
Thank you.
What was that?
noted, so noted.
What did she ask for? She wanted to raise what?
Not a raise. Traffic study. Elm Street and
Oh.
1581.
Okay, sorry.
Alrighty. Any more items for the agenda? If not, we're going on to general announcements. Alrighty. Any announcements? Motion to adjourn.